Good evening, everybody. I'm TR Sai Rakshit, and today we are going to look at JavaScript. So we are going to learn to code, and we are going to look at what JavaScript is, and we are also going to have some hands-on coding. Right. This is the introduction to JavaScript. So JavaScript is basically a programming language of the browser, and it has a lot of abstraction. So abstraction here, what I mean is there is a lot of things that is done automatically in the background without you knowing about the memory management and how you would do manually on the low level language like say C or C++. So it's also platform independent. It has dynamic flexibility, which means that this language is very flexible. And now I'm going to talk about why should you be learning JavaScript, right? It is a programming language of the browser. And if you want to write client side programming, that is client side code that directly runs on your browser, you would be using JavaScript. And for web development, too, it is very useful. So there are other languages like Python, PHP, and C Sharp and Java, which are all doing great, but they are made of server side programming and they can't really generate client side unless there is a library that converts this code into JavaScript. And the other point I would like to add here is you can create an interactive user interface using vanilla JavaScript or using frameworks like React, React Native, and Electron. It can be used also to write server side code that is backend using something called Node.js and with the help of another frameworks like Express.js. Now we'll be looking at some features of JavaScript, right? Features of JavaScript include speed and efficiency, simplicity, popularity, interoperability, interface development, and variability of upgrades. So we shall be looking at each of the terms, right? And I would like to add here by saying that ultimately all these features uh, basically reduces the load on the server each time you run a project with JavaScript, right? And we'll also be looking at some of the features in detail. I'll be describing these features in detail. So it was previously established that JavaScript is a client-side language. That's what we had discussed in the first slide. So such a descriptor makes JavaScript actually habitually fast. In turn, making a house call back to the server. So if you actually see the way in which this works, you have the client-side code and you have APIs and the browser, right? And from both the ends, there is a physical connection. This is the way it works. And customers, of course, do not have the patience or will have to deal with any lag, right? So when you are actually visiting a web page, you basically expect the web page to load really fast. And JavaScript is also in that domain very simple, and it basically gives some dynamic flexibility to the user, right? And next, touching on simplicity, I would like to add by saying that most developers consider JavaScript to be easy to learn and use, right? And it is fairly easy to find, a lot of experts. There is a lot of documentation on it. So it is really easy to, come up with, some kind of solutions or some kind of way in order. If you are stuck while doing a project, it's really easy to come up with solutions because there is a lot of documentation and also experts in the field who can help you, right? And popularity is again GitHub and Stack Overflow are providing a lot of resources here, which is basically looking, really great, and how others handle JavaScript management. So it basically talks about the rich documentation that we have in Stack Overflow and interoperability. Coming to interoperability, JavaScript sustains Netscape's earliest objectives by continuing to offer such powerful interfaces, right? So these, using this, you can do a multitude of things, and upgrades are also really common here. Is this is another reason why people choose JavaScript, and since it has such an edge over other programming languages, JavaScript is the choice, is the go-to choice for most programmers, right? And I'd also like to explain as to why JavaScript is recommended. JavaScript's primary use is to transform web pages from static to dynamic. Nobody exactly likes, HTML pages, so to say, because HTML pages just looks, kind of boring, and it's not that very. You can't basically communicate with it a lot. So here is where JavaScript comes, and JavaScript aims to provide, much dynamic websites, which means that when you visit some websites, you are really fascinated about how it works, right? For example, if you go to Apple's website, or if you go to um, uh, you know other websites where there is some kind of uh, functionality, or there is some kind of communication where the buttons are moving, or when you scroll down, you are basically it feels like you're going into a different world. It feels like you're playing with a website, right? So all those features are also powered basically by JavaScript. So the primary use is to transform web pages from static to dynamic. Static is when you have HTML pages which do not offer much dynamism, and some other examples of JavaScript implementation towards this web page behavior include showing or hiding information, zooming in and zooming out, displaying a timer or a countdown. So in many pages, you find timers or countdowns, right? Where you can see, basically various parameters. If web pages using a functionality where a timer is included, JavaScript is a language to go in if you want to implement such features. And gallery carousels and home pages. So gallery carousels and home pages is basically where you have like a slideshow. You have two arrows, and when you keep clicking those arrows, the slideshow keeps appearing, and it's really easy for us to change the web pages. Now I'll be talking about applications of JavaScript. So again, you can see even in the application, it is really dominating. So we have mobile applications. Mobile applications are basically built to be standalone apps, right? Which is void of any web-based context. So you can build standalone apps with JavaScript as well. Next comes desktop applications. Same goes with desktop applications and web applications too. We just discussed about how web pages are basically getting converted from a static website to a dynamic website, and all thanks to JavaScript because of that. Web servers and application servers. So web servers are another thing that you can actually make using JavaScript, and also server applications. So Node.js, if anybody has heard, Node.js is basically the most frequently used runtime environment for JavaScript, where developers can write, test, and debug code. So this session is basically an introduction to JavaScript, and in the following months we will have a follow-up where we would be covering JavaScript in slightly deeper detail. So when you consider an example, for example, a JavaScript server application is the Opera Unite feature of the Opera browser. So if anybody has some familiarity in using Opera browser, you have this Opera Unite feature of the Opera browser, which basically helps you to, and it's basically a JavaScript server application that is written. Here, you can just see how important JavaScript is in our daily life. And yeah, not to forget games. So games with JavaScript tend to harness the Easel.js library. So this is one library of JavaScript. So on the internet, you have so many libraries, and you can incorporate these libraries into your project as well. So Easel.js is one library known for its rich graphics, right? And to that end, it's a cross-platform, so be you wouldn't be bothered to be switching devices to get a full web page. So it is cross-platform as well. So moving on, now we'll move to JavaScript alerts. So from this slide is where we start actually coding using JavaScript. And now I would like to talk about JavaScript alerts. So basically, an alert method displays an alert box with a specified message as entered by the programmer along with an OK button. We will be looking at this practically also, but here is just an information about what alert is. And an important note here is that the method should not be overused because it prevents the user from getting access to other parts of the page until the box is closed. So the user would get an alert, and until and unless you close the box, you are not going to get access to that web page. Um, so have any one of you come across alerts while visiting web pages till today?
Yeah, when clicking a link to a new web page, I think alert works there.
Yeah, that's a great answer. So there are many web pages where when you click links, you are redirected to a new page, and then you get an alert of whether you want to proceed, or it basically gives you an alert where some kind of information is displayed, and when you click OK, then you then go to the new web page. We have finished 5 slides till now, and does anybody have any doubts still here? So until now, we had discussed uh, introduction to JavaScript. So we understood what JavaScript is. Then we looked at many features of JavaScript. And then after looking at the features of JavaScript, we also understood where JavaScript is applied, the applications of JavaScript and how useful it is in creating many useful web pages, be it web pages or creating web servers, etc. And now we just learned a little bit about JavaScript alerts. Okay. So I think nobody has any doubts till now. So since it's clear, we'll move forward. So I was just explaining about JavaScript alerts till now, and I would like to add an alert is a method in JavaScript that is used to display a virtual alert box. So we will be seeing how an alert box is appearing on our screen, but it is both advantages and disadvantages because the alert box takes the focus and forces the user to read the specified message, right? Until and unless you don't actually read the alert box, you are not going to exactly do anything on the web page. So you have to read the alert box, you have to acknowledge that alert box, and only then the user would be able to do anything else on the web page. So we should. So this is one important point that we need to keep in mind, and so we should avoid overusing this method because it stops the user from accessing the other parts of the web page until it's closed, right? So now we'll be looking at an example. So I have an HTML page here, right? And HTML page is basically I've written a boilerplate code, and boilerplate code is nothing but the code that is visible when you basically instantiate the project. When you instantiate the project, you just have to type HTML, and then the boilerplate code loads. And once the boilerplate code loads, you have all these um, descriptions here. So I'm giving a title. So this is the title tag basically, and the title tag reads JavaScript tutorial, and this is the body tag of the HTML page. This is the head tag of the HTML page, and this is the boilerplate code. So the boilerplate code is nothing but the code that is initially just appearing on the screen. Now, basically, we have an H1, which is a header one, um, which says welcome to JavaScript tutorial, and we have a script tag that basically links to tutorial.js. So there's a script tag which links to tutorial.js, and how can you actually confirm this is when you hover around tutorial.js and you press control and click it, it goes to tutorial.js. We'll be actually seeing how an alert box is being displayed on the screen. So in our HTML, until now we have talked about what an boilerplate code is. It's basically the code that is initially appearing on the screen when you type in HTML. And before you start any project, you just type HTML and then start coding on it. So this is the title tag. If you know a little bit about HTML, so you would know what head tag means and body tag means and HTML means. So all these things are tagged. Nevertheless, I'll cover it in this lecture as well, this session as well, where I'm saying this is a HTML tag and there is a head element to it and also a body element to it. There is a heading or H1 tag which says welcome to JavaScript tutorial, and there is a script tag. So script tag basically is used to link your project to the JavaScript file, and here the JavaScript file is tutorial.js. And how would you know whether it's exactly linked is when you click on tutorial.js, you are automatically redirected to the tutorial.js page as shown. So now what you need to do is just go to tutorial.js, and if you type alert hello world, we want to basically see an alert box that is popping up in our web page before we even actually visit the web page, right? So if you go to tutorial.html and copy the path, and just to add a little bit more about path is nothing but the place where exactly in my desktop where this JS tutorial.html is saved. So if you hover around that, you can see it's on my C drive, users, OneDrive, desktop, and it's inside a folder called JavaScript. So I'm just copying this path. And once I go to my web browser and open a new tab and paste it, so this is what the page says. I was exactly talking about this as the alert box, right? So the alert box says hello world, and it does not basically let me to visit the web page completely. It does not allow the user to basically visit the web page until and unless the user says okay to this alert box. Now when you say okay to the alert box, I'm able to access this web page, and I'm able to make changes on the web page if I wanted to, or do exactly what the web page was intended to do. Until and unless I say okay, I wouldn't be able to access this web page. So this is one disadvantage of this alert box. That's the point we have discussed some time back. So we had seen it is not that favorable for us to basically use the alert alert message every time, because every time there is an alert that's coming in your web page, you have to wait and say okay, and only then you can make changes to your website or your web page. So until now, we have discussed what JavaScript alerts are. And in the next slide, I've basically given the steps that we would follow in order to achieve just what we had seen hands-on. So these are step-by-step, uh, you know, the step-by-step rules that need to be followed or a guideline that needs to be followed in order to basically display that alert box we just saw now. So by opening the VS Code, we are creating a HTML file called jstutorial.html and adding the boilerplate to it. And once the boilerplate is added, what we are doing is we are giving it a title and naming it JavaScript tutorial. That's what we had discussed sometime back also. We had given it a title on the title tag. Now we are creating a file called tutorial.js. When you create a tutorial.js file, Visual Studio is quite intelligent enough, and it basically, uh, it displays this JS in yellow here. So it automatically identifies that it is a JS JavaScript file and types in the simple alert message. Now we have to save the file and copy and paste the path of your file in your favorite browser window and observe the output. So that's what we had exactly did. We had gone to jstutorial.html and we had copied the path of this file. And this path of the file is nothing but the exact place where my file resides. That is what we had done. We had seen the file hierarchy and we had copied the entire path of the file. And when we had pasted the address of that file in a new tab, what we could see is we could see the alert box appearing. And the other point here to note down is we also saw how the HTML page was linking to the JavaScript page. When you hold on the control and hover near that tutorial.js, we could see that it was able to directly go to that page. And we were also able to observe JavaScript tutorial being displayed on the screen, and we were able to make changes or we were able to edit it only after we said OK to the alert box. So till now we have seen all these points. Now we'll move on to variables and we'll see what variables are. So like many other programming languages, JavaScript also has variables, and variables can be thought of or called containers. So basically, variable is something that is going to contain some value which the user inputs. That's about variables. And needless to say, JavaScript too has variables in it. Variables can be thought of as containers where there is a container and you are putting something into the container. So you can just map it to real world also. And you can place data into these containers. So this is what we are going to do. We are going to place some kind of data in our containers, be it Java or be it C or C Sharp or any other language that you code in. You basically use variables in order to store data. If you want to perform some kind of mathematical operation or some kind of string manipulation operation, we need variables in order to basically make some changes or do some appropriate mathematical operations on our data. And here in JavaScript, we have var, let, and const. And we'll be looking at var, let, and const in detail. We'll also be looking at var, let, and const hands-on. So just to recap, we saw what are JavaScript alerts. We had also done a small hands-on session on JavaScript alerts. We saw we were not able to edit the page until we said OK to the alert box. And now we are moving to variables. Variables are nothing but containers that store data, just like other programming languages like Java or C or C++, where you initiate variables in order to store some kind of data. Similarly, it happens in JavaScript also. We are now going to see what is var, what is let, and what is const, and we're also going to do some hands-on using var, let, and const. All right, we'll move forward with variables and we'll look into detail more about variables. So var. So var is basically globally scoped method to create variables, right? var is globally scoped. This is one important point to note down. It is globally scoped. It is quite important when you take into consideration interviews too, because many recruiters do ask from these places. So let us say we have a variable defined at the beginning of a code and another variable with the same name defined in the function or a condition. It will cause conflicts, right? If the variable is defined outside any function globally as well as inside a function, it causes conflict because there will be two places where you are giving two different values, and this is where the conflicts arise. And let us know a little bit more about let and const. So let and const were added in ES6 version of JavaScript in 2015, right? And with ES6, we had major updates to JavaScript. So until 2015, there weren't any updates, and when at 2016 we had a major update. And one important thing to note here is var is not used anymore. So var is actually deprecated. And in 2016 with ES6 and after 2016 with the introduction of ES6, we had major updates and we had basically more features and functionalities in JavaScript. And we would also need to know one important point, which is again important from an interview perspective. And that difference is basically between let and const. So the main difference between let and const that I would like to highlight here is we can reassign a value to a variable, whereas with const we can't, right? With const keyword, we can't basically reassign, or it does not let us reassign the values once it is declared. Once it is declared, and you can't change it. But let lets us to reassign the values. So let's do some hands-on right away. So if I go to my variable.js, I have basically made a few variables. Uh, Namely, say var name is equal to Rakshit, var name is equal to hello beautiful world. I'll be basically taking you through what exactly happens here. So when I have var name is equal to Rakshit and var name is equal to hello beautiful world, we are going to basically see what is going to be output on the console. I would also request all of the participants to make an online compiler. Go to any online compiler would work. You can basically code along with me so that you can understand JavaScript better. Here we are just going to see what is going to be the output of both these statements. So when I type in node, variable.js, we are going to get hello beautiful world as you see on the terminal. And we get this output because we are actually starting to initialize name with Rakshit using var keyword and also hello beautiful world with the var keyword. So this is one disadvantage as to why var was deprecated. And as you can see, to support my point by saying var was deprecated, you can see a dashed line on name, which means that name has been deprecated. When you hover around name, this name is deprecated. The declaration was marked deprecated here. So exactly we are nowadays people aren't using var as such, and this is one important point to note. You can open VS Code in your laptop, or you can use an online compiler and do it with me parallelly so that you understand JavaScript better. We'll also be giving you questions towards the end so that you can also practice online or you can practice on VS Code. Now we'll talk about let and const. Let lets us to reassign values, and const does not let us reassign values once declared. So we'll do this hands-on as well. So let me just write some lines of code. Let me say let age equal to, say you can give any name, say 30. And now I'm reassigning this age, right? that's the point that we discussed until now. Say now, if we say age equal to 25, not required to put the semicolon. This is another point I wanted to highlight here. You can put semicolon, or you could even skip it. It's exactly not um, necessary as such, but the better practice is to avoid it. So now I am reassigning the value of age to 25 or 35 or any value of your choice. And now let me just type. I wanted to type the console.log, which uh, basically prints or logs that statement on the terminal. So when I type in console.log age, what we would be able to see is we would be able to see 35. And why are we able to see 35 is because the variable let allows us to reassign the variable, right? Initially, let us just assume the age to be a container and we had put data into the container so as to perform some kind of mathematical operations on it. And after performing some kind of mathematical operation, at a later point in the program, you want to basically update the age to 35. And let keyword lets you to basically update that value of age to 35. And when you log that on the console, it is just like system.out.println in Java, so to say, or cout in C++, where you just want to log or you just want to print that particular value on the terminal. And when you log that, you can see 35 on the screen. So this is about let. And if I say const, it would not basically let me to do it. As you can see, we have an error. This is exactly what we intended to get. And the type error is assignment to a constant variable. So once a variable is declared constant, you can't reassign it to a different value. So this is about const and this is about let. Now we are moving to data types. So there are 6 types of primitive data types. They include string, numbers, boolean, null, undefined, and objects. I'll be describing each one of them. So basically, strings is nothing but when you try to bring strings into picture, right? So strings can be sentences, strings can be words, etc. And there are all these 6 types of primitive. All these 6 data types are primitive in nature, that is assigned directly to memory. So what I mean by primitive data types is primitive data types are directly assigned to memory and they can be strings, numbers, boolean, etc. So if I say const name is equal to Rakshit, for example, just as in the hands-on lab we saw, it basically is a string. And in another example, when we gave age is equal to say 35 or when we gave age is equal to 30, it's actually a number. And Boolean basically evaluates to true or false. And we have we can basically even in, instantiate some kind of variable with null too and object. So when we consider object, so if I say const problem is equal to null, and I can basically find out what kind of primitive data type is using the type of keyword, right? We'll look at that also hands-on after we finish this. Here, it means that we are directly assigning it to memory and we don't have to explicitly include the data type. So just as an example, we'll look at some of the statements that we had written previously. You can console log the age, or you can even console log the type of a particular. Now when we run it, here again, we are getting this error because we have given it as const. So this was just to prove that we shouldn't be updating the value of the variable once it is const. We have to make it let. And now when you save it and when you run it again, we are exactly getting the intended output, that is number, right? Moving on, we have conditionals, and conditionals are basically very similar to how it works in Java or C++, where you have if, where you have else, and also you can construct an if-else ladder in it. So talking a little bit more about conditionals, you have double equals to and triple equals to in this if-else statements, which is slightly different from other programming languages, right? So what is the difference between this double equal to and triple equal to? Also, we would be seeing right away. And you can also include other logical operators with nested if-else ladder, just like in other programming languages. And now let's discuss about exactly this difference, the double equal to with if-else and triple equals with if-else. So if I just clear and let me just write a small piece of code in order to basically tell you the difference between double equal to and triple equal to. It is slightly important when we take when we consider interviews. So if I say const x equal to 2 for an example, and if I say x double equal to 2, and inside this I type console.log is true, and in the else condition I say console.log when I press Shift Alt and F, it basically beautifies the code. Here, double equal to is basically comparing the value of x, and it is looking here in this if-else ladder if the value of x is actually equal to 2. If it is, then true is displayed. If it is not, then false is displayed. So let's just run this program and see what's the output here. We get true, and this is exactly what we expected also to display. We are getting 2 because the value of x is compared with 2. If the value of x is 2, then true is displayed, else false is displayed. Now let's just see what happens if triple equal to is here. Here, when triple equal to is here, the difference here is it does not basically check for whether the value of x is true or not. Let's just see what comes as the output. Here false is coming as the output, and it's exactly what we expected it also to come. When we put triple equals to, actually the value is not getting compared here. It's the data type that is getting compared here. So since the data types aren't equal, we get false here. But when we have double equal to, we are basically comparing the values, and if the values are the same, we get true to be displayed. So that is the difference between the double equal to and the triple equal to. And the rest of the other functionalities are just the same as in Java or C++. Now we'll be talking about loops. And loops are basically something that helps you to execute a set of code until a given condition is reached. So let us just assume that you want to print the multiples of a number. So instead of doing the same, you could basically type a user to, instead of basically typing 2 into 1 is 2, 2 into 2 is 4, 2 into 3 is 6, and so on. You can just tell the user and run it on a loop and just instantiate I and keep the loop variable as I and then print all the answers. So that's about loop. And here loop basically functions the same or is the same when you expect say in Java or C++, it works the same way. And similarly, in while, it works the same way. Just that instead of system.out.println, you have console.log.out, and you can just print I. So this is the way in which loops are working. And here, if the condition is true, it goes inside the loop, and whatever is present inside the code or inside the function, that part of the code is executed. And once the loop condition is false, the control comes out of the loop. So this is how loops work. So until now, we have looked at JavaScript alerts. We have looked about variables. We have seen data types. We have seen conditional, and we have seen loops also. Loops is very similar to how it works in JavaScript, how it works in Java and C++. So just as an example, you can just write for, say, let I is equal to 0, I less than 10, I plus plus, and console.log I. So this is a very simple loop, and we all can just, imagine what would be the output. So 1 to 10 is printed, and it is just the same as in Java or C++, or and we can just, it works the same way. You can get to know more about how it works by revisiting the previous sessions as well, where we have discussed how it works in deep. So moving on, now we are moving to functions, right? And we'll be basically looking at what function is. Functions are methods. So functions or methods is just the same way as it works in say Java or C++, where you want to perform a particular task, and these functions can be reused in many other blocks of code. That is basically a function, and a function is a block of organized code that can be reused, and you can perform some kind of mathematical operations, or you can also pass arguments to it. And inside that block of code, or inside that block of organized code, you can basically tell the function to do many things. So there are two parts of the function, or that I would like to discuss here. That is function definition and function call. Function definition is where you give the function, and you also write the parameters and also a set of instructions inside the block that needs to be executed. And you can also call the function by just its name. But in JavaScript, there is something called arrow function, and this was basically introduced in ES6 version, so as to make the readability and improve the readability, and also for faster development. I would like to talk a little bit more about functions. So functions can basically divide the code so that each function deals with a specific task, and each function describes a particular task that needs to be done, so that it's becoming very easy for us to debug. So what I meant by this line is, instead of basically adding newer statements to our projects, you can basically say a set of lines, or a set of lines which needs to do a particular task. If it is coming under a function, that function can be called many times in the code, and hence the reusability of that function is increased. And not only that, it also reduces the number of lines of the whole code base. And if it is if the code is written into functions, debugging can be really easy, because you have only a set of few functions in your code, and you wanted to know what these functions are exactly doing. And once you get to know what these functions are doing, it is really easy to understand what's exactly happening behind the scenes in your entire code base. So that's the biggest advantage of functions, that it is reusable as given in the slide. And after the function name, we can put a pair of parentheses, and they would contain one or more parameters separated by comma. So this is exactly the way it works in Java as well, where you have parameters, and you can basically call a function using a set of a few parameters. We'll be looking at hands-on using functions also. I've basically created this uh, JavaScript file where you are exactly writing a function, and our function here is add number, and function is basically preceded by the keyword function. So when you write the keyword function, you get to know that you are actually writing a function here. And num1 comma num2 are the two parameters that are passed to the function, right? And the two parameters you can see here exactly in line 4, which is 5 and 10. And the name of the function is add numbers, right? And under these curly braces, what is written is it has to return the sum of both these numbers. So both are number data types. 5 and 10 here are number data types, as we can see in line 4. And both these data types are basically going into this num1 and num2, which are the parameters of the function that is written in line 1. And this function basically gives the addition of both these numbers. So this is what the function is doing, and it's returning the value of sum on line 2. And once it returns the value of sum in line 2, we are just trying to log that basic sum in line 5 using console.log, just as we did in Java where we said console.log, or just in the case of Java where we used to say system.out.println. Here we are using console.log in order to print that result. So if I say node functions.js, as expected, we are getting 15 as the output because in both these parameters, 5 and 10 are residing, and the addition operation happens. So let's just compare this with a huge code base. So when we compare this scenario with a huge code base, we might have a lot of complex operations that are happening inside the function. And once those complex operations are finished, you are basically returning that particular value, or that particular value which the function has to return. Here it seems a very easy example because we did not write add num1 and num2 or subtract num1 and num2 many times, right? So if you're building a calculator, instead of saying add 5 and 10, or in the future, again, when you want to add, say, 20 and 30, again, we shouldn't be writing the same function that we had written for 5 and 10, the same functionality that is adding, we need not write for 5 and 10. So that's the basic use of these functions, where you need not rewrite the same line again and again, and instead you can just reuse that particular function. Now moving on to arrays. So what are arrays? Arrays are nothing but a collection of similar data types, right? And arrays can be basically thought as something that gives us the freedom to store different kinds of uh, objects that you want inside an array. Suppose you want to store colors, say red, green, blue, and yellow. You can do it using arrays. And the best part here is JavaScript gives us the freedom of using different data types, and also we do not have to define the length of the array while initializing it. So this is one important point to keep in mind. In Java, what we used to do is we used to basically say, when we used to initialize an array, we used to also give a number to that inside the square bracket. It need not be done in JavaScript. We'll be doing a hands-on session on arrays as well right away. So I'll use just the test.js file. So if I say const colors is equal to, I'm writing, giving some colors in it, say red, I'm giving green, and say I'm giving and also I'm giving another color, say yellow. Say I'm giving another color, say orange. And like I told, JavaScript gives us the freedom of using different data types, right? So I can even give numbers to it, like say one, or and I can give another value here, say. So here I'm basically initializing an array and I'm giving different data types also. And now I just want to log a value. The other things are very similar as we see in Java, like the array, it starts with zero, it starts with index zero, like we all know. It starts with red where it is zero, green one, blue two, yellow three, orange four, and so on. And after saving the file, if I just run this particular um, file here, as expected, I'm getting blue because it is uh, taking the second uh, index. It is taking the second index or the value that is present in the second index, which is blue. The rest of the other things are same, but in JavaScript, the point I would like to highlight here about arrays is that it also is letting you to basically store different kinds of data types also in this array. So we have orange, we have strings, we have numbers, we have booleans in the same array. So that is the biggest advantage of using arrays in JavaScript, and it is so flexible, right? We need not basically make two other arrays, one for storing numbers and one for storing Boolean values. Moving on, we are moving to something called object literals. And object literals are basically key value pairs. And this is a slightly more advanced concept than what all the concepts that we have been seeing till now. And object literals are basically key value pairs that are defined under one variable. So you have one variable, and under that variable, you have so many key value pairs that are defined. So under this, what we can do is we can basically take out the characteristics of one particular object using object literals. So we have defined something, and below that we have many key value pairs, which are basically you can also assume are talking about the characteristics of that particular object or entity, and we have access to all those characteristics. So all members of an object literal in JavaScript, both properties and functions are public. So this is one point that is uh, required for us to know. When in the future sessions, we would be looking at a lot of other examples where we would be using object literal to the maximum extent, and we'll also be studying about more about all this. Just to give you a real world example of where this is extensively used, I'll give you an example of package.json. So have you heard about package.json file? Anybody has heard about package.json file? Okay. So package.json file is basically a file which contains a lot of dependencies, right? There is something called npm, which is known as Node Package Manager, and Node Package Manager basically contains all the dependencies of a particular project. The file holds various metadata relevant to the project. This file is also used to give information to npm that allows it to identify the project as well as handle all the project dependencies. When we'll be looking into this in detail, we would be understanding more about object literal. But now, an important thing to remember is it is basically just the key value pairs, and the characteristics of a particular entity are written in object literal. So this is something that we need to know about object literal. And after this, we have higher order array methods. So higher order array methods are basically of three types, which are for each method, map method, and filter method. The for each method is basically used to iterate through all the elements of the array. So it is just like any other loop, like for loop, where you can actually iterate through each and every element that is present in the array. And map method is also used to iterate through all the elements of the array, but it also returns a new array with all the new values, right? That's about map method. And filter method, as the name suggests, it is used to filter something, right? You are basically having an array with so many elements, and you want particular elements in the array after a filtering operation has been performed on the array. So that's about the filter method. It gives or it returns you the elements of an array which satisfy a particular condition. Now we can also be looking at um, the hands-on sessions for all these methods that we talked about now. Let us say I'm giving an array called colors, and inside colors array, I have all these values in them. And now what I want to do is I want to basically use the for each loop. So I'm going to write colors dot for each. Inside this, I'm basically having something called color. So you can basically imagine this to be I, the way we used to do it in loops. And here, if I type console.log color, I should be able to see the output. So let's just run this file. So as expected, we have the output red, green, blue, yellow, and orange. And here I'm basically using the arrow method. I had also talked about this arrow method quite some time back. That is exactly what we are using here. Instead of functions, we can also type in the function, or we can also use arrow method, where we have, which is basically improving the readability of the code also right now. So that's about the arrow. And talking about the map method also does the same thing as this array or for each method, but what it does is it gives a new array which has some kind of alterations that we made, or it basically returns a new array with the new values. So it's just like for each. So we'll be looking at that also very quickly and finishing the session off. So let us say that if I want to basically capitalize all these colors or all these objects in the array, what I'm going to do is I'm going to type const, say uppercase. I want to basically change the colors, individual colors into uppercase. And here I'm saying is equal to colors dot map function. I'm just calling the map function, where here, just like I have something called color, and inside this I'm saying say return and color dot to uppercase. To uppercase is basically the method that is going to convert all the individual colors to uppercase. So that's what I'm doing here. Now I'm just logging that out, and I'm saying I want to see that output. So as you can see, as expected, each of the colors, that is red, green, blue, yellow, and orange, is in capital letters. And that's exactly what we wanted to achieve also with the map method. And filter is also very similar, just that we are giving a condition and we are filtering exactly what kind of elements we want from the array. So in the entire session, we saw a lot of things. We we explored loops, we explored what are functions, we explored arrays, and we also did some hands-on on each of them. We saw object literals, which are basically key value pairs, and it can be basically used to describe the characteristics. And we had also compared it with package.json, which is a file that controls the dependencies. And we look at that in greater detail in the later session. We learned about functions. We also learned about conditionals. We learned about data types. We saw each and every data type. We also saw higher order array methods like for each and map. And also the filter, we also understood what filter is. We mapped through all the elements. We also used for each in the hands-on lab. We had also seen loops hands-on. We had also seen data types hands-on. And we had also seen alerts. We had understood what alerts are, why it shouldn't be used frequently in the code base. We had also seen what happens when we try to access the web page without saying okay to the alert box, which basically is not possible. We have to say okay to the alert box, and only then the user would be able to access the web page. And that is one very important point to note, and also a kind of disadvantage when we consider JavaScript alerts. We saw what are functions. Functions basically helps us to increase the code usability, reusability, and we had also finished it with object literals and higher order array methods, where we had seen for each in action and map also in action. Similar way, filter also works, where you just want to filter a particular value from the array. We had also seen hands-on using arrays, and we had also seen in arrays that we can also give a different data type to the array, and it does not matter. And in Java, it is, or C++, it is quite strict, where you are giving a value inside those square brackets. We cannot basically include different data types into the same array. We covered that point as well, hands-on. And now we can be open for any doubts.
So, if none of you have any questions, we can wrap this up. Thank you so much for attending.